Namaste. Today we are going to discuss about Chaturanga Dandasana. This is one of the most fundamental posture for beginners. To master this posture is challenging, but intermediate level poses like crow or side crow, a Kundalini and its variations can only be achieved when this particular Chaturanga is being mastered. Let's begin up first to show how a Chaturanga it looks like. So when I do a Chaturanga, I want to have my upper arms parallel to the ground, my lower arms perpendicular to the ground, my tailbone tilted down to engage the core, my gaze slightly forward with long neck, my legs engaged as I'm on the ball of my foot or on the tippy toes. In order to reach all these alignments correctly, one should start with the basics right. So when we are doing a Chaturanga, along with the core engagement, one of the most important muscle group which helps to develop this strength, and going forward, that also is the muscle which helps the load of the body in other arm balance. Majority of them are your triceps, which does the pushing action. And also partly the posterior deltoid, the back of the shoulder muscle group. These two combines to do a lots of pressing and helps to elevate up our practice into the next level of arm balances. Now let us first break it down on the hands and the legs positioning. So usually when we are doing a Chaturanga, we begin from a plank. However, in a plank, we keep our feet together. But for beginners, when they learn or start to learn the Chaturanga, they should begin with their feet separated, because this helps them to get a more fundamental stability, increasing the space of balance as the feet are separated. So as I'm keeping my feet separated, I want to first start checking my palms position. My palms want to stay as wide as my shoulders are. I like to keep my wrist crease on the top edge of the mat parallel to each other. It can be your index finger forward or index and middle finger facing forward. As long as the wrist feels good, you're doing it right. Now the next part is the legs. They stay separated. For more advanced student, your feet could be together as well if you have already mastered. As I mentioned before, beginners, it's better to begin with the legs slightly separated. Now, while I'm moving into the pose, now the common pitfalls would be, I tend to drop my hips down. So it's this. As I tend to drop my hips down, I lose the core connection. Step one for this, stay in a high plank and go into a posterior pelvic tilt. So I tilt my pelvis down, and that is called a posterior pelvic tilt. That means my tailbone is now facing down. So I'm holding this core throughout the entire process of this practice. Common pitfall number two. When I start to go down into the pose, I tend to drop my head as if my face is going closer to the ground now, and I feel like I'm quite low already. But if you look at my arms, they're not in the right shape. So, protraction of the neck. And that's because we don't have enough strength in the arms built yet, but we want to somehow go lower down. So we lead this action from the neck. So a measure of correcting this is avoid looking down, gaze slightly forward. Keeping the gaze forward would be somewhere like this. And we also retain the natural curvature of our neck. So from here, step one, posterior pelvic tilt, looking forward, and then I shift forward to go down. And my neck is now fixed. So notice these two parts, posterior pelvic tilt, look forward. Now the next parts are about our arms. Now if you just saw it, I mentioned that before lowering down, I began to shift front. The reason I shift forward is because I want my lower arms to have an angle of 90 degrees. If my lower arms angle is 90 degrees, that's when I'm using my muscles more. If my elbows goes back somewhere over here, it tends to move into a lot on the elbow joint. So something to note over here. So what I mean is, if I do not shift forward and I just go down from here, posterior tilt, looking front, and I go down. You can see my elbows are not at a 90 degree anymore. My elbows are behind my wrist. Whereas when I shift forward, I go down, I get my lower arms 90 degree. So keeping in mind, shifting forward, I'll be giving another drill for us to practice so that we know exactly whether or not our lower arms are perpendicular. Common pitfall, final one, the last one. This is quite common in most of the students, that they tend to drop the shoulders down. Instead of that, keep your shoulder, the scapula stacked back, your shoulders and the clavicle in one line. That would mean posterior tilt, looking forward, shifting forward, everything is fine, but as I go down, I tend to drop. And as I tend to drop, I'm tensing my trapeze and my neck a lot, so rotating it back up. The last one is more about awareness. There's nothing much we can do to fix it up except thinking that I want to pull my shoulders back and I want to engage the muscles of the scapula, around the scapula in. So I want to keep this rather than dropping and protracting. I want to keep it retracted and steady. Okay? So now, for the hand position, especially the arms position, I like to do a practice in this form. I keep a block at the outer edge of the mat. I go into a plank with my forearm resting against the block. So it's a perpendicular line. As I'm moving into a chaturanga, I want to minimize the movement of the block. If your body is not shifting forward, the block tends to fall behind. Let me show you how. So I go here, I'm not shifting, I'm bending my elbows, and that's it, the block falls down. So as I ensure that the block is having minimal movement, I have to shift forward. I do not have options. So posterior tilt, shifting forward, looking forward, and then I go down. And that's where I want to be. I check my shoulders, they're not dropping, they're lifted. So my lower arms position is fixed. So that is one drill I like to do for beginners to ensure that they have enough forward shift. Now next important part is, how low shall I go? Let me show how beginner's chaturanga looks like when they attempt. And this is again probably a bit too deep, taking into the joint rather than using the muscle. So as I go down, this is the hardest position to be in, but beginners tend to drop here. And you can see my elbows are now going slightly back, my shoulder have dropped, but however I can actually hold this, because your body weight is hanging onto the joints more than the muscle doing the work. If it's all on the muscle, the intensity is strong, but you're doing it the right way. And in future, as you're going for more advanced practices, these all good habits stays, and you're using proper muscle alignment and groups in order to feel the changes of the posture. And that manifests us into more and more higher level of poses. So to fix this problem, I would keep a second level of the block. I keep it somewhere around where my fingertips and the block are in one line. The back of the block and the fingertips are in one line. I shift forward and I lower down and I try to touch the block and then lift ½ inch away. I try to touch the block to feel its depth and I lift ½ inch away. Very, very tiny bit away. And I hold that form. So putting these all things together. One block to check the forearms, second block to check the chest. I'll set it up. So again, I check my fingertips and the back of the block are in one line. I check the other block giving me the 90 degree, and that looks good. Pitfall number 1, my arch of the back, I go posterior tilt. Number 2, I look forward to fix my neck. 3 and 4 are the elbows, which the posterior block will take care of. Shoulder is the last one, which is more about awareness. So I go forward, I shift, and I lower down. I touch the first block, and I lift up ½ inch, and I hold it. That's my chaturanga for you. So that's quite lots of information for beginners. For beginners like those who really don't have much of power to get into this form, breaking down step by step, I suggest them to do it in this way. So stage 1 for beginners, lowering down slow, no holds with the knees on the floor. Stage 2 for beginners, after you can do that 5 times comfortably, try placing a block, lower edge or higher edge, that depends on the height and the length of your arms. Hold 1 inch of the block for 5 count, knees still down. Stage number 3, knees goes up, remove the block, keep the one on the forearm though, and go down eccentric again. Slow control all the way down, no need hold. Just lower, come up in a plank, go all the way down, lie down. Plank, all the way down, lie down. Trying to repeat this for 5 times. So that's stage 3. Stage 4 is plank, lowering down, holding in Chaturanga. Let me quickly demonstrate all these 4 steps for you. Step 1, beginner. Plank, knee down. Scoop the tailbone, look forward, long neck, no holds, going down super slow, lie down, push back up. Repeat it 5 times. Good, you're having enough control, not dropping down. Then the next step, block, lower level if you have shorter arms, higher if you have longer. And this time I want to hold. So knee down, tailbone forward, look forward, go down. Hold 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. At least repeat this for 3 to 4 rounds, so 5 seconds. Stage number 3, remove this block. Tailbone, look forward, shift forward, go down. No holds, super slow control. Lower all the way down. Push back up. Repeat this again for 5. When you're comfortable, you're not dropping off. The last one. Stage 4, finally. Shift, tailbone, go down, touch, half inch up, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch the shoulder, not dropping, taking it up. Finally, we get our Chaturanga. Now these all stages takes a couple of weeks or maybe months depending on your fundamental strength, your background of practice, how much core strength you have, what exercise pattern you had been following in your past. So be patient. Continue practicing all these 4 stages if you are a beginner. If you are an intermediate student, never skip your Chaturanga, especially when you're in the group class setting, because that will be helpful for getting higher and better in the practice. If you have got any questions, please write down in the comment section below. I hope you learned something and enjoyed this video. Thank you very much. Namaste.